Here in Louisville at the 2024 American Volleyball Coaches Association National Convention. We're here with D1 Ticker and the Coaches.wire presentation alongside Tonya Johnson, the head coach of the LSU women's volleyball team. And well, Coach, so happy that you're with us. And
thank you.
After an unbelievable national semifinal last night as well. And whenever people watch this, I'm sure they will look back at this tournament as being a monumental one. And so with 20 years under your belt as a head coach and assistant coach as well, what does it mean to have our first female head coach lift the trophy on Sunday?
It's been a long time coming, and I think it's a tribute to the coaches and their hard work and their teams, but most importantly, it lets female coaches know that it can be done, and that's the part that I'm most excited about.
Throughout your time, first as a player with LSU, and then into coaching, and obviously going to the championships with Texas and seeing the growth through Georgia Tech, what have you seen be the forefront of this movement to first with Mary Wise and Mikolas and then continuing to push it through to see this woman rise?
I think people have just been patient. You look at Danny and her experience, you look at Katie and her experiences, and them bringing that to their schools, but just being female role models to their players, and having been players themselves at great Division I schools and having experienced success themselves in Final Fours and national championships. And so who can relate to their teams better than those two and their experiences? And so I think they took their experiences as a player and as a coach, and they brought that to their teams, and they've elevated their teams, and it's been beautiful to watch.
And now one thing that is always interesting is when you have a top assistant working under a male head coach, which you had under Jared Elliott. Yep. What did you experience in terms of having a women's sport coached by a male versus now you're a head coach at LSU, a women's sport coached by a female?
I think everybody brings something different to the table, right? And I look at how Jared coaches and how he relates to his players, and that's something that I picked up on. I thought, the first time I was with him, he was starting to grow in that area. And then when I got back to Texas, I was blown away by his relationships with our players and what that meant to all of our players. And so I took that from him and I brought that to LSU, and that's what we're experiencing right now, just great player-coach relationships. And so I think when you look at Danny and when you look at Katie, I think you see two phenomenal women who have great relationships with their players, and they know how to coach them, whether they're down, whether they're up, it doesn't matter. And you saw, both went through some things last night and they got out of it. The reverse sweep and a national semifinal, that's crazy,
The storyline's abundant. Obviously with Coach Schumacher-Cauley fighting breast cancer in the middle of the season, an unimaginable circumstance, and then to dethrone what felt like a dragon in Nebraska as well. And
Absolutely.
When you watch on the sideline, what are a few things that you're kind of focusing on when you watch volleyball when you're not working?
I just watch how they play together, the cohesiveness of the teams, their energy, how they celebrate each other after doing something well. But you also saw in Louisville last night how they picked each other up after losing DeBeer, who is a major piece for them. And so it was phenomenal to watch, and watching Peterson come in and serve those balls, and having coached her older sister at Texas, I know that those Peterson kids have ice in their veins, and they get it honestly because they grew up in the gym, and so it was really cool to watch.
Another huge storyline as well when her mom had match point against Louisville with Northern Iowa, and it's just been such a fun year. When an injury like that happens, I'm sure you're thinking, what would I have said if I was on that sideline? What would be maybe a message moving forward, or maybe talking to someone who wants to be a coach at home watching this?
Sure.
What could be something that you rally your players with?
I think the message would be is that Anna wouldn't want us to be sad that she's not on the court right now. She'd want us to still go out and compete, and that's exactly what they did.
So I want to move into one of the realms that has taken college volleyball by storm in the last few weeks. And so the big court settlement that announced from the House that it's going to be legal for colleges to pay student athletes in a revenue sharing mode. And so we could start with that and then move into kind of what it means. But when you first got word from your SWA or whoever, kind of walk me through how that started and how things will move forward for LSU.
Well, the first thing you say is, what is happening? And I think our athletic director says it very well. And one of the things he loves to say is there's opportunity in chaos. And that's how I'm looking at it. I'm looking at it as opportunity in chaos and what it's going to do for our program at LSU. And so I think the plan that our administration has going forward, I think it protects us and it includes us, so I'm grateful for that. But I think there's going to be a lot of changes and you're going to see a lot of interesting things happen. But I think if we don't embrace it and we don't get on board with it, we're going to be left behind.
So if you were to try to explain it to someone at home that's like, Coach, I have no idea what this means, what's the first thing you're going to try to tell them about?
Well, I think we can talk about the roster limitations because, I've been doing this for almost 30 years and I've always been told carry as many players as you want because of gender equity in Title IX. And so that's been the mindset I've had for the last 30 years. And now they tell you can only have 18. And so I think, for us as coaches, we have to figure out ways to limit our rosters, and that's hard. And you've seen a lot of that over the course of the last couple weeks. And unfortunately, that's a part of it that's out of our hands. And so you make those tough decisions, and you hope that everybody is okay from it, and they come back from that, and they understand the why. And you have to go on. You have to carry on.
Now, if there was a silver lining, it would probably be the amount of scholarships that are now divvied out. Essentially, all 18 can get a full ride to school. How is that understood by you? Can you still have walk-ons moving forward?
Well, I don't think that every school is going to get all 18 scholarships.
Right.
And so that's the first thing that you have to know is what is your administration going to give you to work with. But I think the important thing for people to understand is that we can split up the scholarships however we want. It doesn't necessarily have to be full scholarships. And so I can give one kid 50 and give another kid 50 and be just fine. And so I think it's an opportunity here for walk-ons to receive some money, some sort of financial aid, if you look at it that way, depending on what coaches are going to do. And so I think we have some tough decisions here to make in the next 4 to 6 months of what that looks like, because it all goes into effect July 1st or August 1st. And so we have some tough decisions to make, absolutely. And we're a sport, we commit early. Like, I'm done. I have my 26th class already. My 26th class was done at the end of the summer. And so, we're having to reevaluate some things and look at some things and making sure that we're at that cutoff of 18 and making sure that we have all the right pieces in place.
Yeah, I've had some coaches come to me and say, I've had to tell people, sorry, you can't come now, and tell certain walk-ons that wanted an extra year, I'm sorry, it's not going to work out there.
Sure.
And getting into the business side of this sport, certainly one area, and obviously LSU is a football haven and a school where football is going to generate so much revenue. Is there some sort of communication that needs to be made that divvies that up with volleyball? How does that work with an athletic department?
I think there's communication that's been had in terms of revenue sharing, and I'm excited about what it's going to do for us as a sport at LSU. And what I love about our administration is they're going to make sure that every sport is taken care of. And they've thought through this, and they've worked through this, and they've worked the numbers through, and I think they've done a heck of a job. And will everybody get exactly what they want? No, but will you get something and get a piece of the pie? Absolutely. And that's the part that that's where we have to make sure that we take advantage of that opportunity and use it wisely.
Certainly reflects what the real world will bring for some of these young kids, a taste of the future.
Sure.
And so you talk about having the 2026 class all set up with this explosion of the portal, and now you see players like the flurry from Purdue that all join the portal the same day. Do you now have to add, okay, well, we want to have 3 players in the 26 portal and this in the 25? How does that work out for you guys? It's a lot more planning.
I don't know in terms of what that drawing board looks like. Again, I think everybody's going to be in different situations. I think people will hold a spot or 2 for transfers in the future. I think you have to definitely look at that and make sure you're prepared for that, and know that, or you got to be okay with the pieces that you have in place already, And so I think that's going to change for people throughout the next year, and I can't tell you where it's going to go because I don't know what it's going to look like.
And, that's why I'm so happy we're having this today. We're going to talk to so many of these coaches and get different perspectives from schools like Creighton that don't have the football perspective to bring in.
Right.
And so as we look at what the landscape is going to sit with, are you seeing different conversations with some of these prospective student athletes about the NIL, about choosing your collective correctly or your agent correctly, because some of these people are getting abused by the system?
Sure, absolutely. And I think, do a lot of volleyball players have agents right now? I can't answer that. I know the people that, we've talked to and we've dealt with, some do, some don't. And so I think it's just going to be, obviously it's what the trend is, right? And so we're always, 5, 6, 7 years to follow football. And we're there on this a little bit earlier than most people anticipated, but here we are.
Well, we could move into a little bit more of a positive subject, and that is the immense growth of this sport.
Absolutely.
It has been such a fun couple of years. I've been covering for 3 or 4 years, but you have been around for what probably feels like the entire lifespan of women's college volleyball now, and from the other era into this new era we journey. And in your eyes, what has been the biggest reason for the explosion, the growth from attendance to TV?
Well, I think people understand how explosive and energetic and energized our sport is. I think once people come and watch after the first time, they get hooked. And I think that's what you've seen throughout the course of the last 4 to 5 years with all the attendance records that are being broken all throughout last season. And so I think people are excited for the sport. I think they get to see our true athleticism, whether it's how high our players can jump or how fast and how hard they go to the floor and get a ball up. I think they love that, and I think that's what's great about our sport is that we get to show off our true athleticism in the game, and people get to witness that.
I think winning can certainly help as well. And reaching the NCAA tournament in your first season as the head coach, did you see the diehard fans that have rallied around LSU softball or LSU gymnastics work their way towards the volleyball arena? And what have you seen from them? Have you gotten feedback of what they are looking for?
Well, what I've seen the most for us, we broke 5 attendance records this year. We had a 30% increase in our season ticket sales, and so people are starting to catch on. They're starting to understand that, hey, these guys have the potential to be really, really good, and we need to go out and support them. And I can't tell you how many people, how many fans that after a match we'll be back and we'll make sure we get season tickets next year. And that's what you want, and you see that happening all across the country. And to me, that's beautiful. That's beautiful for our sport, for a game that we've all worked tirelessly to promote over the last 30 years and bring to people's attention and to the forefront of people's attention. And having ESPN right there, and they've helped too. And so people see it on TV, and hey, we probably should go experience that in person. And I think that's awesome.
I think the move from these simulcasts on LSUsports.com into ESPN Plus and SEC Network Plus have certainly led the way. ESPN Bracket Challenge, right? This year was the first year where fans can put in their bracket, and that's where you can really start to go toe-to-toe with college basketball. If you had a magic wand, is there one thing that you could think of that could make another big leap? Is there anything that's off the top of your tongue, whether it be from a rules perspective or a game flow or maybe even the timing of the season and the way everything goes?
I think it would help if we could get matches a little under 2 hours. Especially for families where you want little girls to come, and what's the attention span when it goes over 2 hours? And so I don't know if that's figuring out a way to make sure the challenges go faster, or I don't know. I know there's talk about maybe cutting down timeouts in terms of that, and so you could probably see some of that in the next 3 to 5 years and see which direction we go in. But I love our game. I love the way we play it. I love, I think getting rid of the double contact on the second contact has been huge for our sport. But I think you'll see some changes over the course of the next 3 years that are going to take us to a whole new level.
I think there's no doubt that if money can be not an object, then Bolt 6 or one of these, Hawkeye style systems that gets rid of a lot of these line calls or even line judges could certainly be a way. You talk about timeouts, and that's something I'm curious, because as a broadcaster, sometimes we have to sit through these 90-second timeouts at every single timeout in the match. Do you think that from a stamina perspective, the players wouldn't be affected too much if they did decrease the time of that time?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think there are times where most of us use the full 90 seconds, and there are a lot of times where we probably use 45 to 50 seconds of it, and so I think it varies. So does that mean we keep one of the 90 second and then we get a 60 second? I don't know. Does that mean we get rid of, if there's not a timeout called at 15:15? Do we drop a timeout from there? I don't know what that looks like, but I know it's being talked about quite a bit in our sport.
It's fun to have the hypotheticals.
Absolutely.
And I do think, that you brought that up, and that carries me into the conversation. And I don't like comparing volleyball to basketball, but when you see the growth models similar, and then a player like Caitlyn Clark comes in and the explosion happens, and it's great because I think the success of women's basketball will only help the success of other sports in that range. But you talk about it, calling a 60 or versus the 2-minute timeout or the full timeout they have. Do you see a difference in that model of growth between college basketball on the women's side and college volleyball, and why maybe you saw that Clark explosion versus there's not one player that did that for volleyball?
Well, I think there are a couple players that could be that for us in the future. Let's take Babcock for an example. She's a stud, right? Yep. And so I think we have the potential to showcase some players in our sport, and I think we can do a better job of showcasing those players throughout the country, where little girls can look up to them and be huge fans, like Caitlyn Clark. Yeah. And she put basketball on the map and really helped it to explode, even though it was already exploding. And you talk about the players that came before her and that paved the way. And but I think we could use a Caitlyn Clark in volleyball to help us get to where we want to be in terms of making sure the fan support is always there, making sure we're always getting the promoting our sport on TV, but also getting it in front of the right eyes and making sure that little girls are watching, because we want them to be volleyball players in the future.
I think one of the things that has certainly helped, and I feel like there was a Brooke Nuneviller effect a few years ago, which is the social media push from some of these student athletes. And we're seeing with the pro leagues as well, promoting and having players encouraged to have these big social media followings. Is that something that you talk to your student athletes about? Do you encourage that?
Absolutely, but some of them want to be a part of it and some of them don't, and I think the great thing about all of this and everything that's happening is it's their choice. And if they want to take the time to do that and promote themselves and promote their social media and get it out there, I encourage it. And if they don't, I'm fine with that too. And so it's all about them and what they want to do and how they want to be perceived by our fans and by volleyball fans all over the country.
And for those that are not too familiar, Coach Johnson was able to really crack into a new world of recruiting when you were at Texas, and really take the nation by storm in your approach and bring in a top 2 recruiting class, and now very well renowned for your recruiting skills. So if you were to give a couple pieces of advice, or maybe reflect on one or two of the most important things you learned from the recruiting trail, what would that be? I
think relationships. Relationships are important. Being able to connect with people is important. And I think you see that across the recruiting. If you get to know the families, you get to know the people that they're closest to, and you learn about them, but you also show them that you care and that you connect with them in some way so that they're comfortable for you. And when they make the decision that they want to come play for you, they know that that's the right decision because they're the right fit for that school, and that school is the right fit for them.
Last question. With the addition of these pro leagues, the PVF and League One, do you see there being a difference in terms of recruiting maybe international talent to come to the United States to play college volleyball, because now the United States has some of these top pro leagues?
Absolutely. I think it opens the door for all sorts of opportunities for internationals, but most important for our American kids. Now their families can watch them play professional volleyball. We don't have to leave the country to go play great volleyball because we have it here, and we have it here in 3 leagues in our country, and that's the exciting part for me, is to see the growth of the pro game here in the States, and our kids can earn money and earn good money and make a living playing professionally here in the United States.
Well, Coach, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Really enjoyed it.
Absolutely. She's Tonya Johnson. I'm Daniel Gillman, and this is Coaches.wire with D1 Ticker.